I stood behind the velvet curtain, hands trembling, as the stage manager whispered into his headset. 30 seconds. He's in position. The overhead lights dimmed. Cameras rolled. Every screen in the country was seconds away from lighting up. I could hear the faint jingle of her favorite morning show playing through the studio monitors, the same show she never missed, no matter what was happening in our lives. And in the center of the studio, perfectly lit and perfectly dressed, stood the man who was about to ruin her life. Or maybe expose the fact that she had already ruined mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 months earlier, I still thought I was a father. We had just celebrated Ava's 2nd birthday, balloons everywhere. The kind of overpriced cake Sarah loved to show off on Instagram, fake smiling as if everything was perfect. I remember holding Ava in my arms that evening, watching her tiny fingers grab at her new toys, and thinking this moment is what makes everything worth it. The long nights, the fights, the compromises, all of it. But something didn't feel right. And I'm not talking about just a vague intuition. It was something physical, something visceral. That party was the first time I noticed how Sarah wouldn't look me in the eye when I kissed her, how she flinched, just slightly, when I touched her lower back, and how she seemed to breathe easier when I left the room. 2 weeks later, I was standing in the garage, searching for a box of holiday lights, when I found it. Tucked between Ava's old crib parts and Sarah's yoga mat was a dusty plastic bin labeled Memories. It wasn't unusual. Sarah kept everything, but the bin was uncharacteristically locked. I know I shouldn't have forced it open. I know. But curiosity, no, dread drove me to do it. Inside, I found a series of old birthday cards. Innocent enough, until I noticed they weren't from me. They were all signed Love Always, J. One even had a date. 2 months before our wedding. The handwriting was delicate but male. Familiar. Too familiar. Jason, her ex-husband. That night, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. I stared at her as she laughed watching some dumb Netflix show, her legs curled beneath her, wine glass balanced perfectly on the armrest. My heart was pounding like it wanted to burst out of my chest and start yelling. But I just nodded along, pretending to listen, biting my tongue until it bled. The next day, I dropped off my own sample at the lab. I told myself I was insane, that I was punishing myself with paranoia, that Jason was just a ghost from a past life she'd buried. But as I watched Ava sleep that night, a flicker of doubt dug itself into my spine. I couldn't ignore the little things anymore. The way Sarah always turned away when changing Ava's clothes. The way she insisted I never take her to daycare. Like she was hiding her from someone, or hiding someone from me. It took the lab 10 business days. I checked my email 30 times a day. I stopped sleeping. My hands shook when I opened the PDF. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it again. Again. I don't remember dropping the phone. I just remember the sound it made. A flat, lifeless thud. Then the rage hit. Not the hot, screaming kind. The quiet kind. The kind that settles deep in your gut like cold metal. It was never about the cheating. Not really. It was that she looked me in the eyes, every day, knowing. Letting me fall deeper into love with a child who was never mine. Letting me build a life around a lie. But I didn't storm in and confront her. No. I needed her to feel what I felt. Publicly. Unexpectedly. Irreversibly. And that's where the press conference came in. That's why I contacted his publicist. And that's why, on the day of her medical school graduation, while she stood at the podium in her white coat, thanking her incredible husband for standing by her side, she had no idea that I was behind the curtain, holding the results, waiting to step into the light. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. After reading the results, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the lights off, just staring out the window into the backyard. Ava's plastic slide was still covered in rain. One of her little shoes was tipped on its side in the grass. I should have cried, but I didn't. Not yet. My body was frozen, like my mind hadn't caught up to what I had read. Probability of paternity, 0%. That phrase kept looping like a virus in my skull, each repetition digging deeper into my chest. She had done this. She had planned this. I began replaying every single moment. Every smile. Every I love you. Every fake moment of happiness she manufactured while carrying another man's child in her belly and letting me believe I was the father. Sarah had always been a master manipulator. She didn't scream during arguments. She didn't throw things or get dramatic. She smiled. She smiled while slicing you into pieces with her words, always keeping her tone soft, her eyes calm. She made me apologize for her betrayals, and I was so blind I didn't see the pattern until I had already bled out emotionally. Around 4 in the morning, I heard the creak of the stairs. I didn't move. She walked into the kitchen, wearing that oversized hoodie she always wore when she wanted to pretend we were still young and spontaneous. She didn't see the envelope yet. I had tucked it into the drawer beneath my seat. "Hey," she whispered. "You're up early. You mean I haven't slept since you destroyed my life?" I nodded once. Couldn't sleep. She walked over, kissed my head. I fought the urge to flinch. "You've been quiet lately," she said, sitting across from me. "You okay?" That was her move. Always checking on me, like I was the one who needed therapy. Like my silence was the root of our problems. Not her secrets. Not her damn ex-husband's DNA running through the veins of the baby girl I'd been calling mine. I forced a small smile. "I'll be okay." She nodded, satisfied with my answer, then walked to the fridge to grab oat milk for her morning smoothie. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, turned the screen down. I didn't need to ask who it was. I already knew. Jason. The same Jason she swore she hadn't spoken to in years. The same Jason who lived just 10 miles from us now, coincidentally relocating for work last spring. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Why would I? She said she didn't even know. Liar. That day, while she was in the shower, I unlocked her iPad. She never turned off the sync between devices. Her arrogance made her sloppy. What I found was worse than I had imagined. The photos were recent. Him with Ava, in a park I'd never been to. Sarah wasn't in them, but Ava was on Jason's shoulders, giggling, her little hands tangled in his hair. My daughter. My not daughter. I had never seen that outfit before. The one she was wearing in the photo. That day, Sarah had told me Ava stayed home sick. Jason sent her the picture. "She looks just like you," he wrote. "I can't wait till we don't have to hide this anymore." Her reply? "Soon." That single word flipped a switch in my brain. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her iPad across the room. I took screenshots. Sent them to my own email. Then I got up, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat in the living room until she came out, towel-wrapped, humming like she hadn't just detonated a nuclear bomb under my feet. "I'm gonna take Ava to your mom's this weekend," she said. "I've got interviews lined up, and I need the time." I looked at her for a long time. I wondered if she even felt guilty. But all I saw in her face was convenience. She didn't love Jason. Not really. She loved that he wanted her. She loved the drama, the thrill of doing something behind my back and getting away with it. That smug power trip that came with fooling 2 men at once. And now she was planning her exit. No, I was going to exit first. But I wouldn't just walk away. She made me a fool in silence. I was going to make her a fool on national television. I already had the plan forming in my mind. One she wouldn't see coming. One that would rip the mask off her carefully curated life. Because if she thought I was just going to cry in the dark and let her start a new life with my daughter and her ex-husband, she had no idea what I was capable of. 3 days later, I was sitting across from a man named Travis Mallory in a high-rise office overlooking downtown. His tie was loose, shirt wrinkled, and his desk was covered in empty coffee cups and 3 phones that hadn't stopped buzzing since I walked in. He was a PR shark, the kind of guy politicians hired to make affairs disappear or to spin stories when CEOs were caught embezzling millions. He leaned back in his leather chair, laced his fingers behind his head, and whistled when he finished reading the DNA results and scrolling through the photos I'd taken off Sarah's iPad. "Damn," he muttered. "You sure you want to go nuclear?" I didn't blink. I want her exposed. Publicly. I want her to remember the day she stood up in front of the world in that white coat and introduced me as her amazing husband, right before I stepped into the frame and turned her career to ash. Travis grinned slowly. "I like you already." He laid out the plan like it was a game of chess. Not rash. Not dramatic. Strategic. Calculated. Destructive. "I've got a buddy who works for Wake Up Today," he said, naming the exact morning show Sarah never missed. Hell, she DVR'd it in case she couldn't watch live. "They're hosting a health segment next month featuring top med school grads. Your wife's on their radar. Want to crash her debut?" I didn't even hesitate. Set it up. That night, Back at home, Sarah was giddy. She'd received an email invitation for a televised roundtable of medical grads. She couldn't stop talking about it. "Oh my God, this is huge, Matt," she said, bouncing around the bedroom like a damn cheerleader. "They picked me. They said someone from the station specifically asked for me. I mean, how? What?" I kissed her forehead and smiled. "Maybe someone finally noticed how hard you've worked." Her eyes softened. "You've always been my biggest supporter." I choked down the bile. "Not supporter, sweetheart. Audience." And I'm about to leave the stage. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the doting husband flawlessly. I picked up takeout from her favorite Thai place. I let her gush about hairstyles for the broadcast. I even drove her to her dress fitting and took photos of her twirling in front of the mirror like some goddamn rom-com montage. Inside, I was rotting. Every time she smiled, I saw Jason's hand on her thigh. Every time she touched me, I saw his name in her inbox. I'd never hated anyone in my life, but what I felt growing for her was colder than hate. It was surgical, a total emotional amputation. But the hardest part was Ava. That little girl still called me daddy every morning when I poured her cereal. She still reached for me when she scraped her knee. She still curled up in my lap when Sarah wasn't looking and whispered, "I love you," into my chest. I didn't know what kind of monster it made me to smile and say it back while knowing the truth, but I did. Every single time. On the Thursday before the show, I visited Jason. He lived in a condo across town. Bachelor vibes. A gym bag by the door, sports posters on the wall, and a baby photo of Ava on the mantle. He opened the door, surprised to see me. "Matt, we need to talk," I said, and I walked past him without asking. He followed, unsure. "Is this about Ava?" I turned, met his eyes. "So you admit it." Jason's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. Not even a flinch. "I didn't know she was yours until." "She's not mine." Silence. We both stood there, surrounded by the noise of a life Sarah had built behind my back. "You're not going to make a scene, are you?" he asked quietly. She said. "I don't care what she said." I snapped. "But I'm going to give you something you clearly don't have. Warning. I'm going public with this. She's about to be on national television, and I'm going to be there." His face dropped. "You think you're in love with her?" I said, stepping closer. "Wait until you see what she does when the lights hit her. She doesn't want you. She wants to win. And you're just the next trophy." Jason said nothing. He knew I was right. I could see it in the way he looked at the photo on his mantle, like he didn't even know what it meant anymore. I left without another word. That weekend, Sarah's excitement reached its peak. She rehearsed her talking points, practiced smiling in the mirror, tried on a dozen pairs of earrings. And me? I rehearsed too, because the next time I saw her on camera, I wouldn't be standing in the background. I'd be stepping into the spotlight, with proof in one hand and a microphone in the other. The morning of the show, I woke up before dawn. Sarah was still asleep beside me, one arm flung lazily across my chest like a peace treaty she didn't realize she had already broken. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. She had no idea that her entire life, her career, her image, her stolen fairy tale, was set to implode in a matter of hours. I slipped out of bed without waking her. My suit was already pressed and hanging in the closet. Not too flashy. Simple. Dark gray. The kind you wear to either a funeral or a courtroom. Both seemed appropriate. Downstairs, I packed Ava's things quietly into a small overnight bag. I'd already arranged for my sister to pick her up after daycare. Ava didn't need to see what was coming. Whatever else happened today, she was innocent. A victim of the same lies that had nearly buried me. At exactly 7:15, I texted Travis. "On my way. Show starts at 9. We go live at 9:15? His reply came instantly. "Yup. We'll key you when she's mid-speech. You'll walk on from the left stage wing. Just follow my guy." I stared at that message for a long moment. This was real now. No turning back. Upstairs, I heard the sound of the shower running. Sarah was up, humming, probably rehearsing her opening lines. Probably picturing how many congratulatory texts and Instagram DMs she'd get once the show aired. Maybe she'd planned a little celebration dinner tonight. Just us. To new beginnings, she'd say, clinking wine glasses with the same hand that had erased my entire identity as a father. I didn't say goodbye. I left the house with the manila envelope under my arm and the cold weight of justice pressing into my chest. The network studio was downtown, hidden inside one of those corporate glass towers that always felt 2 degrees too cold. The lobby was buzzing with production assistants, makeup artists, and interns running around with clipboards. Nobody paid me much attention. Travis had already arranged my entry. A tall guy in a headset nodded at me and led me toward the private prep room, away from the chaos. "She's already here," he said. "You'll be just off stage left. Travis will cue the host when it's time." "Perfect." He handed me a water bottle, then hesitated. "You sure about this?" I looked him in the eye. "You ever lose a kid without burying them?" He flinched, nodded once, and walked away. I sat in the dressing room alone, watching the countdown on the wall monitor. Live feed was already rolling. The hosts were grinning, doing their usual morning banter, sipping from oversized mugs. The topic bar at the bottom read, "Meet the future of medicine. Top grads share their journeys." At 9:03, the first guest walked out, a nervous redhead from Vermont who tripped slightly on the rug. She laughed it off. Everyone clapped. At 9:05, the camera panned to Sarah waiting behind the curtain, smoothing her coat. Her smile was radiant. She looked like the dream, polished, articulate, glowing with success. The host introduced her, and she stepped out to thunderous applause. I felt my stomach twist, not from nerves, but from rage wrapped in sadness. Because for years, I had built her up, fed her confidence, worked overtime to pay tuition bills while she found herself. And here she was, stepping into a spotlight made from my sacrifices, ready to rewrite history live on air. And then she did the unthinkable. As she took her seat, the host leaned in and said, "So, Sarah, you've had quite the journey. Tell us about your support system." She didn't hesitate. "My husband, Matt. He's incredible, patient, supportive. He's been the rock behind everything I've achieved." The camera cut to a smiling photo of us, one I didn't even know she'd submitted. I was holding Ava in my arms, smiling like a man who didn't know he was standing on a trapdoor. The audience awed. I stood up. Travis guy nodded. "Time to pull the lever." I followed him down the dark hallway toward the side of the stage. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was pure, clean adrenaline. Years of betrayal condensed into a single moment of retribution. The host asked, "And what's next for you, Dr. Ellis?" Sarah beamed. "I just want to keep helping people. I've always believed that honesty and trust are the foundation of good medicine." The curtain parted slightly. The producer gave the cue. I stepped onto the stage. Gasps. One camera pivoted, trying to catch up to the moment. Sarah froze mid-sentence, her mouth still forming a word. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then narrowed. "Matt," she said, almost laughing, like I was holding flowers instead of proof. I didn't answer her. I turned to the audience, held up the manila envelope, and smiled. "Hi. Sorry to interrupt," I said. "I just thought since we're all being honest today, I'd share something about my family too." The room went dead silent. And Sarah's face, God, her face, went pale like a ghost had just crawled up through the floor. This was only the beginning. The studio was paralyzed. You could feel the stillness ripple through the air like a dropped glass. Every breath in the room hitched. The audience stopped clapping. The host's smile collapsed into a twitching line. The cameraman near the side nearly dropped his rig trying to reframe the shot. One of the producers hissed into her headset, "Cut to commercial," but nobody moved. The control room knew exactly what was happening. Television gold. And they weren't going to cut away from it. I walked slowly across the stage towards Sarah, envelope still in hand, eyes locked on hers. She didn't stand up. Not right away. She didn't even blink. Her body tensed, like prey caught mid-step, waiting to see if the predator would really bite. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice low, trembling, but only just. The mask was still on, but the cracks were spreading. I held up the envelope to the audience. "This right here," I said, "is a set of DNA results I received 3 weeks ago. You all just heard my wife," I gestured to her, "talk about honesty, about support, about love." I turned back to her. "So I thought now was a good time to talk about betrayal." There was an audible murmur in the audience now. The host stammered, "Oh, Matt, maybe we can discuss this off air." I ignored him. I could see Sarah's lips parting, forming strategies behind her eyes. But she didn't speak yet. She knew it wouldn't help. She didn't know what I had or how much I knew. Perfect. 2 years ago, I said, we welcomed a beautiful baby girl into our home. Ava. I was there in the delivery room. I cut the cord. I sang to her the first night while Sarah slept. I raised her, loved her, thought she was mine. Now the room was quiet. Not silent, quiet. The kind of thick, anticipatory silence that leans forward, waiting. Sarah stood now slowly. Matt, don't do this here. Oh, I think here's the perfect place. I looked at the camera dead center. Especially since she just used national TV to lie to millions of people. The host tried again, nervous now. We really should take a break. She cheated on me with her ex-husband, I said calmly, voice steady but cold. While we were married. While we were planning for our daughter's birth. While I was refinancing our house to pay her tuition bills. Now the gasp was loud. Even the makeup artist backstage peeked out from behind the curtain, mouth open. Sarah's face flushed crimson, then white. That's not true, she said, but her voice cracked at the end. Oh. I opened the envelope, pulled out a copy of the results, and held it up. 0.00%. That's the probability I'm Ava's father. Do you want to explain that, Sarah? She looked like she might faint. But then, like the serpent she is, she shifted. I watched it happen. Her spine straightened. Her voice returned, colder now. Controlled. So what? She snapped, eyes burning. You want to humiliate me? On national TV? You think that makes you a man? I didn't flinch. No, Sarah. I think being a father to a child who was never mine for 2 years made me a man. This. I held up the paper. This is me refusing to be a fool. Her voice rose, panicking beneath the ice. I made a mistake. A mistake is buying almond milk instead of oat milk. A mistake isn't sneaking our daughter into your ex-husband's condo behind my back. That hit her like a punch. And then came the real twist. I turned back to the audience. But don't worry. You're going to hear her side. You'll hear it tonight. Because the rest of this story, every email, every text message, every photo, they'll be on full display in tonight's press conference. I already sent it to every major outlet in the city. We go live at 7 p.m. I could see her legs tremble. She tried to speak again, but the words didn't come. Security began quietly making their way toward the stage from the side. Not for me, yet, but for her. The host had his hands folded, stunned, like someone watching a plane spiral from the sky. And I walked off. Just like that. Didn't yell. Didn't scream. Didn't even look back. The only sound behind me was Sarah's shallow, panicked breath as the cameras kept rolling and the world watched her unravel. Live. In HD. But this wasn't the end. This was just the first fracture. The collapse hadn't even begun. The footage hit social media within 20 minutes. I didn't post it. Didn't need to. Someone in the audience had been recording from their phone the moment I stepped on stage. By the time I made it out of the studio lobby, it was already going viral. The title varied: Man exposes cheating wife on live TV, DNA shocker interrupts medical grad's interview, press conference bombshell teased after scandal goes live, but the views? Exploding. Hundreds of thousands by lunchtime. Millions before sunset. I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the studio, still in my suit, watching her perfect life disintegrate in real time through the glass screen of my phone. The barista gave me a weird look, probably wondering why this well-dressed man was staring at a video of himself like it was a movie trailer. But it wasn't ego. It was confirmation. That the pain she buried me in wasn't invisible anymore. That the image she built, the selfless doctor, the radiant wife, the perfect mother, wasn't just cracked. It was ash. Sarah tried to call me 7 times between noon and 2. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded every message she sent to Travis. He was coordinating the press conference, handling the press, timing the drop. He called it the surgical strike. I called it justice. At 3, the station issued a statement. We were not aware of the personal matters involving our guest, Dr. Sarah Ellis, prior to today's broadcast. We are currently reviewing the segment. Corporate speak for we don't want to get sued. But they didn't cut the footage. Didn't pull the segment. They let it ride. Hell, they re-uploaded it themselves with ads. Sarah always wanted fame. She just didn't expect it to be this kind. By 4, the text turned vicious. You ruined me. You blindsided me like a coward. How could you do this in front of my colleagues? You exposed Ava. You exposed yourself. This will follow you too, you idiot. You're not the victim here. Each one was more desperate than the last. Then came the longest message of all. Matt, please. You're angry. I get it. You're hurt. But Ava, whatever happened between us, she doesn't deserve this. She loves you. She calls you dad. That's real. Please don't punish her for something she had no control over. Let's talk. Just you and me. No cameras. Please. You don't want to keep escalating this. Let's fix it. There's still time. Fix it. Fix it. The arrogance baked into those two words made my hands shake. She thought this could be fixed. That she could manipulate the narrative again. Pull me into her room. Spin her side. Cry a few tears. Gaslight me into believing this was just some messy chapter in our love story. But she didn't know what I knew now. That it had never been our story. I didn't reply. Not yet. I needed her to twist. To sweat. To feel vulnerable in a way she never had before. Because for years, she had power. She held the truth in her fists, and I loved her so much I never once thought to pry her fingers open. No more. At 6:30, I walked into the hotel ballroom Travis had rented for the press conference. It was dimly lit, every chair filled. Reporters, photographers, bloggers, local affiliates, national ones, people I'd never even heard of, all waiting, hungry. There were 3 screens behind the podium, one with the paternity results, one frozen on a smiling image of Ava carefully blurred, no identifying details. And the third? The third was Sarah. On stage, earlier that morning, frozen mid-smile, caught in the act of telling the world how lucky she was to have me. Travis met me near the podium, grinning. You're trending harder than the Grammys. I didn't smile. Let's go. He nodded. You speak. Then I roll the footage. Then Q&A. You can skip that if you want. I won't skip it. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? She took everything from me except my voice. She's not keeping that too. At exactly 7 p.m., the cameras went live. The room went still. I stepped up to the mic, heart steady, voice ironclad. I'm not here to play the victim, I began. I'm here to show you what happens when someone turns love into a weapon. I'm here to make the truth public, because for 2 years I lived in a lie so carefully crafted it took science to break it. The audience leaned forward. She knew, I said. From day one. She knew that Ava wasn't mine. And she let me fall in love with that little girl anyway. She used me. My money. My name. My loyalty. And when I was no longer useful, she planned to walk away quietly, slide back into the arms of the man she never left. I looked at the camera. She will tell you this was a mistake. That it was complicated. That things just happened. But I've read the messages. I've seen the photos. There was nothing accidental about it. I paused. This isn't about revenge. This is about visibility. Because every man out there raising a child with pride and love deserves to know the truth about what he's building his life on. Then I stepped back. Travis rolled the tapes. Text messages appeared across the screens, line by line. Images of Jason with Ava. The I love yous. The soon. The secret meetups. The one where she signed off with I'll pretend he's you tonight. The room recoiled. And I stood there, staring directly into the camera, saying nothing, letting the silence scream louder than anything I could have planned. The internet wouldn't sleep tonight. And neither would she. That night, my phone nearly exploded. People I hadn't spoken to in years, high school friends, co-workers from 3 jobs ago, my ex-girlfriend from college, even my freaking landlord, texted me to say they'd seen it. Some said they cried. Others said they cheered. One guy, a friend of Sarah's brother, simply wrote, I knew something was off about her. Even my dad, who I hadn't heard from in 6 months, left a voicemail. I saw what she did to you. You didn't deserve that. None of us did. You're not alone. And just like that, the loneliness cracked. Not shattered, but cracked enough to let the air back in. But Sarah? She was silent. Not a word from her the entire night. No messages. No calls. No threats. No guilt trips. Nothing. Which scared me more than the screaming ever would have. Because silence was her strategy. Silence meant she was calculating again. At 3:08 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. You want the full truth? Meet me. Alone. 10 a.m. Riverside Motel. Room 6. No name. But I knew it was her. The Riverside was a forgotten roadside spot off the highway, used by truckers, cheaters, and people who didn't want their cars seen. She was being careful now. Too careful. I knew I shouldn't go, but I also knew I had to. Not for answers. I had those. But because every war has a final conversation before the last shot is fired. The morning air was still when I pulled into the cracked parking lot. The neon sign buzzed overhead like a dying insect. Her car was already there, parked backwards, plate smudged with dried mud. Room 6 had a curtain drawn half-closed. I stood in front of the door for a full minute before knocking. No answer. I knocked again. Harder. Finally, the door opened 2 inches. A sliver of her face peeked through. No makeup. Red eyes. Hair tied back. Not the polished, smug woman from the broadcast. This was the Sarah I hadn't seen in years, the one who knew she couldn't talk her way out this time. She opened the door and stepped aside. I walked in. The room reeked of stale air and fear. There were 2 chairs, a tiny TV bolted to the dresser, and a bed neither of us looked at. She sat, crossed her arms, didn't speak. I stood, arms at my side, waiting. I watched the whole thing, she finally said, voice raw. I know. You planned this. You forced me to. She blinked rapidly, like tears were threatening but too proud to fall. Ava's still your daughter. She knows you. She loves you. No. She loves the man you made me pretend to be. Silence. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered. I laughed. You didn't think I'd find out? Or you didn't think I'd have the guts to fight back? I didn't think you'd hate me. My face stiffened. Hate? I wish I hated you. Hate is simple. You gave me something worse. You gave me confusion. Love soaked in lies. A family built on sand. I can't even look at Ava without wondering what parts of her I invented just to keep my own heart alive. That landed. Hard. She looked away. Jason didn't know at first. About Ava. I told him after she was born. I didn't know how to tell you. I kept thinking I'd find the right time and then. There's never a right time to tell someone their child isn't theirs. You think that makes it better? That you were just waiting for the perfect moment. Tears came now. Hot. Silent. I didn't mean to fall back into it with him. It wasn't about love. It was comfort. He understood things you never did. I stepped forward, voice low. Then why did you keep me around? Why not leave? Why let me pour my soul into a child that wasn't mine? Why let me wake up at 2 a.m. for feedings, work double shifts, sell my goddamn car to pay for med school? She shook her head slowly. Because you were better at being a father than he ever could be. And I thought maybe if I just pretended hard enough, it would become true. I stared at her for a long time. And then I said the one sentence she never expected to hear. Jason told me everything. Her face snapped up. What? Yeah, I said, slowly. We talked. He showed me your plan. That little document you drafted about custody, the move, the house across state lines. The life you were building behind my back. Panic bloomed across her face like wildfire. He wasn't supposed to show you. He didn't. Not at first. But he cracked. Because unlike you, he still thinks Ava deserves a future without secrets. I walked toward the door. I'm filing today. The court petition includes every document, every photo, every message. I'm not just divorcing you, Sarah. I'm stripping you bare. She stood up suddenly. You can't take her from me. I turned. No, but I can make sure you never again control a single version of the truth. I left. Behind me, I heard the crack of something hitting the wall. Maybe a lamp. Maybe her last illusion. But I didn't stop. The final blow hadn't landed yet, but it was already in motion. By the time I walked out of that motel room, the sky had shifted from gray to a searing, cloudless blue. Heat shimmered off the pavement. My shirt clung to my back, damp with sweat and something colder clarity. No more secrets. No more conversations behind closed doors. The world had seen the surface, but now it was time to drag the rest of it into the daylight. Everything she thought she buried. Every email, every document, every whisper in the dark. I wasn't done. Not even close. I got into my car and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Cliff Monroe was a warhorse. 60, former prosecutor, looked like a linebacker, spoke like a preacher. When I handed him the folder labeled Custody Manipulation and Intent to Relocate Without Consent, his eyes narrowed behind his glasses. Son of a bitch, he muttered after flipping through just 3 pages. She drafted this with Jason? Yes. Jason showed me the original file on his laptop. Dated. Timestamped. She was planning to leave me, take Ava, move 3 states away, and file for full custody after I emotionally destabilized during the split. He whistled low and leaned back. She was going to set you up as an unfit father. Exactly. He shut the folder. Okay. You want scorched earth. I want the truth on record. I want the judge to see your pattern. I want a court to acknowledge what she did. To me. To Ava. I want protection orders. I want a restraining clause. And when it's all said and done, I want sole custody. Not as her father, but as the only stable parent figure she's ever known. Cliff nodded. We'll file this afternoon. And we did. That night, Sarah broke the silence. She showed up at my sister's place. Ava was there. My sister had taken her in temporarily, trying to shield her from the fallout. She was in the backyard playing with sidewalk chalk when Sarah pulled up in her Lexus like it was just another weekend pickup. She didn't get through the door. My sister blocked it. Matt said you're not to see her. Not without court approval. Sarah laughed in disbelief. Court approval? I'm her mother. And Matt thought he was her father. You lied to him for years. So you'll forgive me if I don't take your word on anything right now. She needs me. She needed honesty. You gave her chaos. Sarah clenched her fists. This is his fault. He's destroying everything. Just to get back at me. No, sweetie, my sister said, her voice calm and cold. You destroyed everything. Matt's just making sure it doesn't happen to someone else. Sarah stormed off, tires screeching, sunglasses on, jaw tight. 10 minutes later, she posted a long-winded, carefully crafted statement to her social media. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. But I've always acted out of love for my daughter and for the people I've cared about. The recent events unfolding around my personal life are painful, not just for me, but for everyone involved. I ask for privacy, for grace, and for understanding as my family navigates this moment. The comments section exploded instantly. But this time, it wasn't sympathy she received. It was fire. So, no denial? Translation, I got caught. You let a man raise a baby that wasn't his, and now you want privacy? Grace? You build a house on a grave and asked us to call it love. She turned off comments in less than 20 minutes. Too late. Screenshots were everywhere. The press had already picked up the court filings. Words like custody fraud, emotional manipulation, and paternity misrepresentation were flying. Her once polished name was now synonymous with betrayal. That night, Travis called. You want to give a statement? I paused. No. I'm done talking. I'd said what needed to be said, but I wasn't done acting. The next morning, I received a call from Jason. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Matt, he said, we need to meet. Now. Why? Because there's something I didn't tell you. And it's worse than everything else. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? I didn't just find out Ava was mine after she was born. Sarah, she lied to both of us. From the beginning. A coldness crawled up my spine. She told me she'd terminated the pregnancy. That's why I left. She made me believe Ava didn't exist. I stood in my living room, silent. She used the baby as leverage. First with me, then with you. But that's not all, he added. Matt, she told her boss you abused her. She said she had bruises. I just found out. She's building a case behind your back. My pulse thundered in my ears. She wasn't done. She was going nuclear. And now I had to decide, do I fight this in court? Or do I take her down before she walks into that courtroom with lies painted like bruises? The final battle was here. And I wasn't going to let her throw the first punch. I didn't sit down. Jason's voice still echoed in my head, sharp and surreal. She told her boss you abused her. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was premeditated character assassination. Sarah wasn't spiraling. She was strategizing. I paced the living room, fists clenched, mind racing through every interaction of the last 3 months. The sudden distance. The way she flinched when I raised my voice once during an argument. The misunderstanding she had with our neighbor when she claimed I'd forgotten to close Ava's car seat properly. She'd been planting seeds, setting the stage, framing me, softly, with precision. She wasn't going to lose. She was going to burn it all down and walk out of the fire with custody, sympathy, and maybe even a book deal. I called Cliff. We have a problem, I said. She's laying groundwork for a domestic abuse claim. There was silence. Then, how do you know? Jason just told me. She's making moves, smearing me to colleagues. Playing the victim. It's textbook. Character erosion before court proceedings. Get ahead of it. Make the man look unstable. Cliff exhaled. Okay. We handle this now. Do it fast, I said, before she files anything formal. That afternoon, I drove straight to the hospital where Sarah worked. I needed someone to witness the truth. Not just my lawyer, not just Jason, someone on the inside. Someone who'd heard her version. Her supervisor's name was Michelle Hannigan, ER director. Sharp eyes, reputation for being fair but tough as hell. I waited outside the staff entrance until I saw her step out for a smoke break, just like Jason told me she would. She spotted me and stiffened. Matt Ellis, right? I nodded. Can I talk to you for 60 seconds? I'm not supposed to be. It's about Sarah, and a custody case that's about to get real ugly. She didn't move for a moment. Then she glanced around and nodded toward a side bench. I sat beside her, handed her a sealed folder. And there are screenshots, court filings, paternity results, and proof that Sarah has been lying to both me and Jason for over 2 years. She didn't open it. She's about to accuse me of abuse, I said bluntly. She's setting the stage, and you're one of the people she's already started with. Michelle raised an eyebrow. She said you had a temper, that you got physical once. I swallowed hard. That's a lie, and she knows it. She's never filed a police report. No ER visit. No documentation. Just hearsay. She's trying to poison the well. Michelle finally opened the folder. She read quickly, efficient, no wasted motion. Page by page, her face hardened. When she reached the email Sarah sent to Jason, don't worry, he'll look crazy soon enough, she shut the folder and looked at me dead on. I don't like being used, she said. I'll testify if I have to. I stood. That's all I needed. As I walked away, her voice followed me. Matt. I turned. You should keep a recorder on you. From now until this trial's over. Record everything. I nodded. Already started. Back at home, my doorbell rang at 7:02 p.m. I checked the peephole. Jason. His face was pale, tense. She's losing it, he said the second I opened the door. She called me 20 minutes ago screaming. Said she knew we met. Said if we testify against her, she'll say we conspired to fake the DNA results. I stared at him. She's spiraling. She's desperate. And she has nothing left to lose. He handed me a flash drive. I backed up every message. Every calendar invite. Including a voice memo she accidentally sent once. She was ranting about how she'd built the perfect lie and just needed 6 more months to make it permanent. I took it. This saves me. It saves Ava. Jason looked down. I want to be in her life, Matt. I do. But not like this. Not if Sarah's the one pulling strings. I nodded slowly. Then help me win custody. You step forward, admit paternity, admit what she told you, and stand in that courtroom with me. He hesitated. Then, I'll do it. We shook hands. At that moment, I realized how strange life is, how the man who stole your child without knowing it becomes the only ally you have when everything burns. 2 days later, Sarah served me. Emergency court filing. She accused me of verbal intimidation, coercive control, and passive physical aggression. She described imaginary slamming doors, long silences as psychological abuse, and made vague references to visible bruises without dates or medical records. Cliff read the packet and chuckled. This is a house of cards. Maybe, I said. But house of cards or not, it still gets filed. And it still stains. I wanted to punch something. Anything. But I didn't. Instead, I sent Cliff the flash drive. And then I made the call I'd been avoiding. To the reporter who'd first covered our press conference. Are you still interested in the rest of the story? I asked. Her voice sharpened. I've got front page space waiting. Good, I said. Because this next part's uglier. But it needs daylight. She asked me to send what I had. I paused. One more thing. I want to go on record. Name, face, everything. Not anonymous. I'm not hiding from this. Are you sure? She asked. It'll go wide. You'll be the guy who got lied to, exposed it, then got accused of being the villain anyway. I was the villain in her version the moment I asked questions, I said. I'd rather be the truth teller in mine. I sent her everything. The next headline would drop in 48 hours. And when it did, the entire country would know that Sarah hadn't just cheated. She engineered a fatherhood fraud and then tried to silence the only man who ever actually showed up. The article dropped on a Monday morning, and by noon, the internet had detonated again. Doctor accused of paternity fraud, custody manipulation, and fake abuse allegations in explosive court war. It was long, brutally detailed, verified by documents, screenshots, emails, audio clips. The reporter hadn't held back. She painted the full picture: the affair with her ex-husband, the fake family portrait she'd pushed for years, the hidden plan to flee with Ava, and finally, the false accusations of abuse leveled against me the moment she lost control of the narrative. The article included a breakdown of court filings, quotes from my lawyer, and most damning of all, a transcript of Sarah's accidentally recorded voice memo, timestamped 6 months before the DNA results. He's not gonna know. He'll just keep playing dad until I'm done setting up the real future. I just need a few more months, and he'll look crazy if he tries to pull anything. That sentence went viral on its own. It ended up printed on t-shirts and plastered on Reddit threads about narcissistic manipulation. Comment sections turned into war zones. Strangers rallied behind me. Women, men, fathers who'd gone through the same nightmare in silence. Even people who once called me reckless for going public now changed sides. This was no longer just a personal betrayal. This was a case study in betrayal. Sarah didn't leave her house for 2 days. On Tuesday morning, her lawyer filed a motion to postpone the custody hearing, citing mental health strain and hostile media environment. The judge denied it. Friday, 9 a.m. The hearing was set. But the real storm hit Wednesday evening. Sarah showed up at Ava's daycare. I got the call from the front desk manager, Mrs. Larson, while I was still at work. "She's here," she whispered over the phone, panic in her voice. "She's demanding we release Ava to her. But your court orders say otherwise. She's not on the approved pickup list anymore." My blood ran cold. "Don't let her leave the building. I'm on my way." By the time I got there, Sarah was standing in the lobby, red-faced and trembling. 2 staff members stood between her and the hallway that led to Ava's classroom. "You don't have a right," she hissed. "I'm her mother." "You don't have custody," Mrs. Larson replied, firm. "And this center respects legal boundaries." I stepped through the door. Sarah turned. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't look furious. She looked broken. Her makeup was smudged. Eyes red. Her coat was misbuttoned. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Matt," she said, voice cracking. "Please." I didn't answer her. I turned to the director. "Is Ava okay?" "She's fine," she said, gently. "She's painting." She didn't see anything. "Good." Sarah stepped forward, hands open. "You can't just erase me from her life. I carried her. I loved her. She's mine. I met her eyes. No, she's herself. And she deserves to grow up without lies." "You're poisoning her against me," she whispered. "You poisoned yourself," I said. "And now you want to drink from my cup." Security escorted her out. She didn't fight. Just looked back one last time, lips trembling, before walking out the door. I stayed an extra hour at the center that day. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear to leave Ava in a world where people like Sarah had access to her. She painted me a picture before we left, a stick figure with brown hair and a smaller one holding hands. Underneath, she wrote, "Me and Daddy." And for a moment, it didn't matter that my DNA didn't match hers, because what she felt when she looked at me did. The night before the hearing, Jason called. She contacted me again. I sighed. "What now?" "She wants me to testify against you. Said if I don't, she'll file to terminate my rights and block me permanently." "Can she even do that?" "She can try, but it won't work." There was silence between us for a moment. Then he added, "I'm still showing up. I'm not backing out." "I know," I said. "She's scared. That's why she's flailing." "She's terrified," he agreed. "And I think she's going to try something at court. Something dramatic." "What do you mean?" She said, "If I can't have either of you, then neither of you gets her." I sat back, heart pounding. This wasn't just legal anymore. This was warfare. And I needed to be ready for anything when that courtroom door opened. Friday, 8:54 a.m. The courthouse smelled like cold tile and tension. I sat at the petitioner's table, flanked by Cliff and a security officer we'd quietly hired the night before. Not because we expected violence, but because unpredictability had become Sarah's weapon of choice, and I wasn't about to let her throw one last grenade without a witness. The gallery behind me was full. Reporters, legal observers, a few anonymous spectators who just wanted to see the woman behind the headlines. Jason sat on the far side, alone, clean-shaven, suit-pressed, palms flat against his thighs. His eyes met mine once. A nod. The courtroom doors swung open at exactly 9 a.m., and Sarah entered. My breath caught. She wasn't dressed like herself. No heels. No sleek power blazer. No bright lipstick. She wore a pale gray sweater, a low ponytail, flats. Her makeup was minimal. She looked like a tired mom who'd spent the night rocking a crying toddler. It was a costume. A well-crafted illusion. Cliff leaned in and muttered, "She's going for the sympathy card." "Yeah," I whispered. "She's trying to look small." But her eyes, God, her eyes, they betrayed her. Flicking between me and Jason like we were chess pieces. She sat down, pulled a small photo frame from her purse, and placed it in front of her attorney. It faced the judge. A picture of her holding Ava at the hospital, newborn in her arms. The performance had begun. The judge, a seasoned woman with short white hair and an expression like concrete, called the session to order. We began with affidavits. Cliff outlined our case with surgical precision: paternity fraud, custody concealment, intent to relocate without notice, attempted parental alienation, and now, documented false allegations of abuse. He presented hard evidence: emails, call logs, the audio memo, Jason's sworn statement. Sarah's attorney countered with the expected emotional complexity, confusion about paternity, deep love for the child regardless of biology. Then, right on cue, the real performance began. Sarah stood, asked permission to speak directly. The judge allowed it. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, clutching a printed photo of Ava like it was an anchor keeping her from drifting away. "I made mistakes," she said, voice trembling. "I lied. I admit that. I was scared. Alone. Jason and I had history. I never meant to hurt anyone. I wanted to believe Matt was the father because he acted like one. He loved her. And I loved him for it. I thought if I could keep the lie quiet, we could all be happy." She turned to me. "I never planned to hurt you, Matt. You were the best father Ava could have asked for." But when the truth came out, everything collapsed. I didn't know how to fix it. So yes, I got defensive. Yes, I tried to protect myself. Her hand fluttered to her chest, eyes misting up. But I am Ava's mother. I gave birth to her. I've been there every day. And whatever happened between the three of us, that little girl deserves her mother. The gallery murmured. It was convincing. Too convincing. Until the judge cut through it like a blade. "Dr. Ellis," she said, voice cold but steady, "do you deny telling your employer that Mr. Ellis was abusive?" Sarah paused. I expressed concerns. Yes. Concerns. Not incidents. Sarah nodded. The judge opened a file. "Your own deposition includes a statement that you had visible bruises. Yet there are no medical reports. No photos. No police records. Can you explain this discrepancy?" Sarah stammered. I may have exaggerated." Cliff rose. "Your Honor, the term is fabricated. And we have proof she made similar statements and messages to Mr. Parker, threatening to make Matt look crazy if he stepped out of line." Jason was called next. He was calm, direct. He testified to the emails, the secret meetings, the plan to move states away. He admitted his role in the affair, his regret, and the moment he discovered Sarah had lied to him too, telling him she'd terminated the pregnancy when she hadn't. When he finished, the judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "I've seen many custody battles. Rarely do I see one so clouded by deception. Dr. Ellis, you weaponized motherhood. You manufactured evidence. And you jeopardized the mental stability of the one person who stood by you without condition." She turned to me. "Mr. Ellis, while not the biological father, you have demonstrated unwavering emotional, financial, and psychological support of the child. This court recognizes you as a de facto parent with full legal standing." And then, the ruling. Temporary sole custody is granted to Matthew Ellis. Jason Parker will receive supervised visitation pending full evaluation. Dr. Ellis, until further review, you are to remain no less than 100 feet from the child, her school, and any primary residence associated with the petitioner. This order is effective immediately. The gavel fell. And just like that, the lie died. Sarah didn't move. Her hand stayed clenched around Ava's photo, knuckles white, as if she could hold on to the fantasy just a little longer. But reality had arrived, and it did not care how pretty the illusion had been. Security stood ready. She looked up at me one last time, eyes empty. No rage. No sorrow. Just the cold vacuum of a woman who thought she would win and lost everything. And I stood taller than I had in years. Because tomorrow, for the first time since Ava was born, I would wake up not as a lie, but as her real protector. The morning after the ruling, I woke up to the sound of little feet running down the hallway. Ava burst into the room, still in her rainbow pajamas, hair a messy halo around her sleepy face. She launched herself onto the bed and curled into me without a word, like she'd been doing it her whole life. And I guess she had. I held her tightly. In that moment, it didn't matter whose blood was in her veins. What mattered was that she felt safe in my arms, that when the world turned upside down, this was the place she ran to. Are we going to have pancakes? She mumbled into my chest. I smiled. Absolutely. In the kitchen, I poured batter while she danced to cartoon music. She sang off-key, made up words, and laughed so hard she fell backward into her little chair. It was the sound of freedom, hers and mine. A sound that had once been wrapped in lies and layered in deception was now stripped clean. Pure. The storm was over, but the wreckage still smoked in the distance. Later that afternoon, Travis called. You ready for the final wave? Final? I asked. He laughed dryly. The networks want your story. Prime time. National interviews. You're the man who stood up to a calculated fraud and walked out with his dignity intact. They're calling it one of the most high-profile paternity cases in a decade. I hesitated. I don't need more attention. Maybe not. But there are other men out there who do. Men who haven't found the words yet. Men raising children in the dark. You could be a voice. I looked out the window. Ava was in the yard with my sister's dog, chasing Bubbles. The sunlight lit her hair just like it used to light Sarah's when we were young and foolish and thought forever was guaranteed. All right, I said quietly. One more interview. For them. Travis grinned through the phone. I'll book it. Sarah didn't appear in court again. She didn't appeal. She didn't send another email. She vanished. Word got around that she resigned from her hospital position. Jason said she went back to her parents' place in Arizona. He hadn't heard from her since. Not even to check on Ava. I'd like to say I was surprised. But truthfully, that was the most honest thing she ever did, disappear. Jason stayed in the picture, but from a distance. He visited twice a month, never alone. Brought coloring books. Laughed too loud. Tried, awkwardly, to find footing with the little girl who had his smile but not his memories. We agreed on one thing. She came first now. Not our guilt. Not our brokenness. Just her. We'd both been manipulated. But only one of us had the scars to prove we chose to stay. 6 months passed. The house felt warmer. Not because of the sun, but because the shadows were gone. Ava and I fell into rhythm again. Morning cartoons. Saturday pancakes. Walks at sunset where she'd point out every cloud that looked like a unicorn. I taught her how to ride her bike. She told me I was the best not real daddy ever. I just told her she was my whole world. And I meant it. The story eventually faded from the headlines. Another scandal replaced it. Another tragedy. The internet moved on. But the letters never stopped. Men from Georgia, Ohio, Idaho. One guy from Ireland. They all wrote the same thing in different words. Thank you for speaking when I couldn't. You saved me from thinking I was crazy. You made me feel seen. I kept them all in a shoebox. Not because I needed the validation, but because I knew what silence felt like. What it cost. I wasn't going back to that. Ever. One night, after Ava had fallen asleep with a plush dinosaur wrapped in her arms, I stepped out onto the porch with a glass of bourbon. The stars were out. Quiet. Sharp. I thought about Sarah, not with hate. Not with love. Just as a scar. Something that healed, but never vanished. She lied. She shattered a family. She tried to rewrite reality itself. And for a time, she almost won. But the truth? The truth doesn't need permission. It just waits for someone brave enough to drag it into the light. And when that light finally came, I wasn't broken. I wasn't beaten. I was reborn. And the little girl asleep in the next room? She was safe. Because this time, the man raising her didn't believe in fairy tales. He believed in truth. And he'd never let it go dark again.